Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Coco and Adults. We took a bit of a break there. We're not sure why.
Well, because life happens. That's why.
I got sick, and then I recovered, and then employment issues, and then there was that whole extradition thing that we won't get into. But for another week, here we are, and I'm not Coco, just for as a reminder.
And I'm not Adults.
So this is going to be the best podcast we've ever done.
Don't get people's hopes up.
The reason I'm saying that is not necessarily because of the content that we will bring therein.
What are you doing?
No, I'm just saying, I'm not being all braggadocious. I'm just saying that events that were leading up to the content of this podcast were spectacular. So you can't make this stuff up, people. This is our day.
And if you're Adults' friend who listens to the podcast and takes a drink every time we say a big word, you just got braggadocio. So, I just said it again. So there you go. That's 2 drinks.
I don't think he listens anymore. I think he got bored.
Well, I'm going to take a drink.
Okay. So what we did, this is what our mission was today for our podcast. We went to see Captain Marvel.
Only like 3 weeks after it came out.
Only 3 weeks after it came out because life. And
also, to be fair, I don't like going to see Marvel movies the first couple weeks they're out because they are packed. And I do not want to mix with the unwashed masses.
I was just going to say
in superhero movies. So.
You don't want to be in that crowd.
I'm old and snobby. So. It's true. Girl, you know it's true.
Well, in our local theater here that needs a serious upgrade, even that would probably have been packed.
Yeah.
And there was a relatively few people there. I mean, probably 20 people total in the theater.
And we walked in 5 minutes before the preview started, and we were the first people in there.
And we had the choice of seats. And, of course, where we sit, this is big news because people want to know this. Mm-hmm. We always sit in the back row.
We do.
And we always sit next to the chair that has a huge hole in it so that nobody will sit there.
You reminded me that that's where we sat when we saw Black Panther.
Exactly.
In that exact theater.
That's our seats. Those are Coco and Adult seats that they have in our local theater. They don't know it, but those are the Coco and Adult seats.
Maybe we should approach management with some kind of sponsorship thing, and we could just reserve those seats all the time. Although I think those seats are getting torn out because they're still old school, like flip-down theater seats, and they're getting replaced with like real recliners and stuff like most theaters have now. So
that place is so old that the popcorn that is down between the chairs actually has real butter on it.
No.
That's how old those chairs and those theaters are. You know what I think we should do? You know, there's back behind where we sit in our usual Coco and Adults chairs. We should put a hot tub right there.
Oh my God, that would
because
be
there's like a little platform. It's not actually, it's not a handicapped area or anything like that. It's just like 2 isolated chairs on their own, and they're always in this bright light.
Yeah, totally. We should. I like the hot tub idea.
I'm thinking hot tub. It's sort of like at Arizona in the ballpark, and they have like the hot tub out in the outfield.
Yeah, uh-huh.
I'm thinking that's what we should be doing.
Is that the only like baseball reference you've ever made in your entire life? Because Daltz doesn't really like baseball.
Not the baseball fan in this relationship. No. You know what? Actually, taking it a step further, if they're going to renovate the theater, never mind those big ass lazy boy chairs or lazy boys chairs, as they say in my homeland.
Do they really say lazy?
No, they don't.
Okay,
I'm just saying that.
Okay.
There should just be nothing but rows and rows of hot tubs.
That would be awesome.
Like, how many hot tubs would you get in that theater that we were in today? Probably 40.
Yeah, probably, because that was the biggest theater, because it was Captain Marvel.
And it's an old-fashioned theater.
You know what? I bet they have a suggestion box at the theater, and we should totally put that in the suggestion box.
I double dare you.
I'm totally going to do it. If we go back tomorrow and see the second movie that we were planning to see today.
Don't spoil it.
We maybe didn't see today. If we go back tomorrow for that, I'm totally going to put that in there. And the 16-year-old boys who work there don't care.
They don't care. No. They were checking their phones when we were double dipping. So here's the thing. I'm going to present something new to the podcast. I'm going to talk about what we're going to talk about.
Oh.
Rather than be like suspenseful.
But we haven't recorded the rest of the podcast yet, so we can't say skip ahead to 1612 if you want to
No, I don't mean it that way. I just mean like topics. Okay. So we went to see Captain Marvel, and then I said to Coco, if I'm going to go see Captain Marvel, yet another Marvel superhero movie that
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you're going to drag me to that. I'm going to drag you to see Shazam. So it's like counterbalance.
Right.
You know, they cancel each other out. One's like totally taking itself seriously, and one is not.
Yeah.
I hadn't read reviews very much about either one of them, other than on Facebook, because I didn't want to prejudice my reviews.
I didn't even know what Shazam was. I thought it was maybe a remake of that Shaq movie from back in the 90s. That was a thing, right?
That was a thing.
Yeah, I totally. I was like,
that's a good guess.
Did they remake the Shaq movie? Like,
that's a good guess, but it's not the same as the driving movie that we were talking about previously, and you thought it was.
Oh, the Green Book?
No, the other one we were talking about, and you didn't want to go see that because you thought it was a kids' movie. That's a different podcast. We'll let the listener make that conclusion.
Go back in our archives and...
You have to have a little bit of mystery.
Yeah, and re-listen to old episodes to figure out what the heck Daltz is talking about.
So what? And then I'll also note so you could email me and let me know what I was talking about. So we went to see Captain Marvel. We were intending on seeing Shazam. We had all these counterpoints. I was thinking Captain Marvel is this, Shazam might be that. And so that's what we're going to talk about later on. But let's talk about Captain Marvel. That's a bit of a tease there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Captain Marvel. And tell me, Coco, you must go first because I'm doing a lot of talking in this podcast. Okay. Tell me, and you're the lover of these movies, the appreciator. You have a better sense of these than I do.
I would like to tell our listeners, though, that I don't actually read the comic books. I enjoy the movies because...
Well, who reads anymore? I mean...
Well, I know. Well, no, I just bought that book about dog diet needs because...
And have you read it?
No, because it just came today.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to read it. But yeah,
somebody needs to make a podcast out of that book is what they need to do.
Coming up on our next episode, find out what Coco is feeding her 17-year-old dog who just got diagnosed with kidney issues.
Because you're on the edge of your seat.
We did have a spike in downloads this month, and I predict that trend will not continue.
Oh, that's because I was applying for jobs. That's why.
Speaking of employment issues.
Never mind. Let's move on.
So, what was I saying?
You were talking about Captain Marvel, the movie that we went to see today.
Yeah. So, I don't read the comic books, so I don't know how closely the screenplays hew.
So, you don't go to the conventions?
I don't.
You
go
don't wear
to
the
Comic-Con.
gear.
I don't dress up like...
What do they call it? Cosplay?
Cosplay, yeah. No, I don't do Marvel cosplay.
Are you sure? Because that was a pretty nice costume that Brie Larson
I would wear that.
Would you really?
You know what? Okay, I
like the Nine Inch Nails t-shirt myself.
I want to wear that because I'm a 90s girl. I did enjoy all the 90s. There wasn't as much 90s nostalgia as I thought there would be. I was kind of disappointed in that, but I liked the 90s soundtrack. I will say that right up front. The 90s soundtrack in Captain Marvel and then the Led Zeppelin use in Thor Ragnarok, which you did not watch. I really like that. I think Marvel is upping their soundtrack game the past few movies.
Ragnarok. So Ragnarok and roll.
Yes. Yeah, but it wasn't been a long time since I rock and rolled. It was the immigrant song.
Oh.
You know, because I mean he's a Norse god, so he comes from the land of thunder and ice and thunder or whatever the lyric is.
Isn't that a Men at Work song?
No, he comes from a land down under.
Oh.
That's totally different. With the Vegemite sandwich.
Under Thunder. Very close.
Yeah, very, very close.
So,
except Men at Work, and that is the only time Men at Work and Led Zeppelin have been mentioned. And this is way too long. We've lost
we're good.
all our listeners.
No, we're good. We're only 8 minutes.
All right, so...
It just seems long.
Do you want me to... Aww. Do you want me to recap the movie?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Tell the listeners what it is for the 5 people who have not seen it or read anything about it.
Right. So because we're late to the game, if you are also late to the game or if you just don't care, then why are you listening to this podcast? But, so Captain Marvel is played by Brie Larson, who won the Best Actress Oscar a couple years ago for Room.
Not a cheesy actor.
Brie. Oh, there you go. No, I'm a vegan now. I can't eat brie, so I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so
There's a joke there I won't make because this is a family podcast.
Oh.
No, keep going.
All right.
Keep going.
So,
save me.
How do I even describe this? So she's actually human from Earth, but there's a big thing with Annette Bening, and she gets kidnapped by Jude Law.
Warren Beatty is not in this.
No. And she gets taken, Brie Larson, a.k.a. Carol Danvers, a.k.a. Veers.
AKA, how do they got Veers out of VERS?
Because the dog tag.
Yeah, but VERS, that would be Vers to me.
I just go with it. So it's a comic book.
There's another E missing.
I know. So
I'm challenged. See, this is the grammarian in me. I'm out. I'm out at the Veers thing.
So she gets kidnapped by Jude Law and taken to this other civilization.
Who was looking totally buff, by the way.
Yeah, he was.
I was looking at him as like, is there CGI going on here? Because he's looking really good.
See, okay, here's my thing. Like Jude Law, I think he's one of those people who is like a character actor in a leading man's body. Like back in the 90s, he was just so impossibly beautiful.
That's a good way to look at him, yeah.
He's Jude Law. He's still freaking gorgeous.
He's a good-looking guy.
Like as he's gotten older and he's kind of aged and become a little bit craggier, like I think he's getting better parts. Because back then they just wanted him to be like the pretty boy. Yeah. And now he's getting.
Well, I watched Closer the other day, and I thought he was fantastic. I love that movie. I will say, and he was great in that. I've never bought the Jude Law is just a pretty boy actor guy because he's British.
Yeah.
So the British actors, and not to broadly paint everybody with the same brush, but they seem to have more depth than some of the typical pretty boy North American actors.
Yeah, I was thinking him and Ray Fiennes, those are two, like Ray Fiennes when he was younger, like, and like now he's older. And
does that mean you thought he was an attractive guy? That noise was a...
Yeah.
Okay.
Like even when he was like a Nazi in Schindler's List. Like he was,
oh, really?
Yeah,
I never saw that.
Okay. And Captain Almazzi and The English Patient. Yeah.
Fantastic movie.
Oh, yeah. We need to watch that again.
That's a top 10 book, too.
Yeah. And Chris Pine. Like I know we said not American actors, but Chris Pine... freaking gorgeous, but now he's gotten a little bit older and he's kind of gotten away from like hey, people want me to be the leading man, and he's kind of taking like more interesting character-driven roles.
I get them mixed up. I'm like everybody else.
He was the wee cheeky shite in that Scottish Robert the Bruce movie that we saw on Netflix when we were in Pittsfield for my yoga training, and
there's a reference that I should get exactly what you mean, and I don't recall that at all.
The Robert the Bruce movie that we watched on Netflix, in the hotel. Okay, so anyway, now we're totally losing our, and now shirtless Daltz at the dining room table is like
doing
flexing
my Captain America. So
she gets kidnapped by Jude Law and taken to the Cree civilization, which are like.
Cree with a K, not to be confused with the Native American Cree with a C.
Or Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Right, which is a natural confusion point there.
So she gets kidnapped by Jude Law and taken to this civilization, and they claim that they're like heroic.
Kidnapped or saved. We're led to believe saved.
I mean, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Look at the depth.
I know.
And that is not in the research note.
No,
you just pulled that right out of the air.
I know. That's not in our Times Square scroll.
And the engineers just fell over in the booth because that was such a great line.
I know. Not because they're drunk. So
because you wouldn't have to be to work with us.
I mean, we're not drunk right now.
No.
So the Kree allegedly are hero warriors,
all
allegedly buff. Like saving the galaxy. And Jaimin Hansu, who is also apparently in Shazam, is a Kree.
And why we say apparently, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But then it turns out nothing is as it seems, and Fears ends up back on Earth where she discovers
Vers.
That
to me, it's Vers. No, it's Veers in the movie, but to me, it's Vers.
She ends up back on Earth, and she discovers that the last 6 years of her life since Jude Law kidnapped her have been a lie. And then she becomes, through various Annette Bening means, the most powerful superhero in the world, which apparently internet fanboys are upset about because she's a chick and a chick can't be awesome. But, get over it. It's
not only what
book.
year are we in, but what century are we in?
Right.
Like, just stand off your insecurity.
Right. Like, who cares?
Who cares?
It's
exactly.
a comic book.
You've
had all the fun. How many boy movies have you had up to now in the MCU? Like, every movie has been led by boys.
Oh, by the way, she's a very attractive woman.
Oh, she is.
And she's in very good physical shape. She's movie star beautiful and got a movie star body and all that sort of stuff. So they're playing to the fanboy element right there. Like, she's not just a regular everyday person. She's a fantastic looking woman. So
like she's
fanboy
still
stand down.
A blonde with perfect beachy waves, regardless of how many times she gets beat up.
So I think her superpower in this movie, as I was watching it, was her to be able to do all this stuff and save the universe and battle the lizard guys and everything like that, and only be able to see out of one eye because she always had that lock of hair that was down across her other eye. I was like, how does she do that? She's only got what's that do to her depth perception?
That's very 90s, though. Like the grungy...
So the 90s reference, so I'm going to go right in here on the movie.
Okay, go for it.
So...
because we're already 15 minutes in. We haven't actually talked about the movie.
At some point, we got to pull it back on the rails here. So the movie, to me, I really liked it. I was going into it thinking, okay, another Avengers superhero movie.
I'm sorry.
Disney, it's going to be the same thing.
I'm
It's
the
gonna...
worst girlfriend ever. I drag you to all the superhero movies.
No, this is what a relationship is.
Give and take.
Give and take. Go to things that you wouldn't necessarily go to. This is what people do. Or this is what people are supposed to do. Anyway, the society is not buying into that. But anyway, I thought it was a lot better. I was going in with low expectations, superhero movie expectations.
Right.
There's going to be calamity. There's going to be CGI. There's going to be destruction. There's going to be conflict. But it was actually more of a human story than I imagined it would be. And there are some very serious political undertones in this movie. So adding more on to what you said. She's the superpower, but she's trying to save, as it turns out, there's a bit of a spoiler here, but the bad guys end up being just regular type creatures who want to look after their families and they want to reunite with the people they love. This is very much Trump border security-esque.
They're migrants. They're the migrants who are separated from their families.
And all the lizard bad guy wanted to do was see his wife, or whatever they call it in lizard world, and his child offspring. They just wanted to reunite with them and get back together again and make sure they were safe and okay.
Right.
And this is like I guess the point of this is it's a universal quality.
Right.
And so this is a heavy duty, in my mind. The last 3/4 of this movie is a very political movie, politically charged movie.
And they even drove that home when Captain Marvel ends up on Earth and Jude Law has to go, quote unquote, save her.
Yes.
And he and his Kree people are, talking about, okay, set a course to Earth. And he's like, has anybody been there before? And one of them says, I've been there. It's a real crap hole.
But they didn't use the word crap.
But they didn't use the word crap. They used the word that our
that everyday people would use.
Yeah. So
yes,
yeah, it was that was a real.
It was very obvious. To me.
It was not subtle.
And it took that in the last maybe 2/3 of the movie. Like I say, the last 3/4, but like in that zone where it was going along, and there was origin story, and there was this, it was flashback. It was very creatively done. It was different. When I saw Jude Law in the beginning as the mentor, my first thought was like, oh, he's dying. This is what's going to happen, because that's what happens in these movies.
Yeah.
And then Brie Larson / Captain Marvel is going to avenge his death. And the story did not go that way at all.
No,
it went in a different direction entirely. And the people that you are, and again, this speaks to the migrant part of it, is that you're conditioned to fear these people or the lizards.
Yeah.
In this case,
because
they're
they don't
scared.
look like you.
Exactly. They don't look anything like you. And the immigrant part of this is where the lizards are shapeshifters, so they can turn into everyday looking people in the movie anyway. So there's the migrant factor there. Is that, oh well, they can just take your job, they can replace you, they can become you, and this is a much deeper. And I don't think this is me just sitting in the back row, having too many Slim Jims or something like that. Like this is intentional in this movie,
right? And that's where anti-miscegenation laws come from too. Like they intermarry, and then there's impure blood, and you can't tell who's who. And so
I say to people that think it's just a superhero movie, I think that there is that to it. There is absolutely that to it, and it's entertaining on that level. And I saw there was a dad and his young son went to the movie, and they sat right in front of us, and they got that out of that movie. They were. I'm sure the kid was just into it because it was a superhero movie. I didn't interview the dad afterward to find out if he went with the subtext.
If we hadn't have been rushing off to a second movie, maybe we could have done that. And so it wasn't also just, an immigration allegory. It was also like a girl power allegory.
Yes.
And not even necessarily,
But that was obvious to me, right?
Yeah, it drove home the girl power, but it could be about anybody, because at the end, she says, I've been fighting with one hand tied behind my back forever, but you see the flashbacks of her childhood, and like every single time she falls off the bike or she crashes her go-kart or whatever, she gets up.
She stands back up again.
And finally she's just
like... That was a powerful moment.
Yeah, that was I got a tear in my eye. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was like, I haven't even been drinking, and oh my God, I'm getting a tear in my eye.
I didn't get a tear in my eye, but I was like, this is really well done. Because, and we were talking about I was talking earlier about taking my 2 daughters to this movie.
Yeah, it's a really good movie for
this. To me is a great
kids.
movie. Like, I know Wonder Woman was originally, I was like, oh, I might take them to see Wonder Woman. I did not, but that seemed to me like it was on a different level. I have not seen Wonder Woman, so I can't judge it. But Captain Marvel seems like, and not just as it applies to women. Yes, women should stand back up again, but also
anybody who's been beaten down,
anybody else who's been miscast or misunderstood, or has any sort of society imposed disadvantage, should just stand right back up again. Like, I really like that message.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and to bring it home to our afternoon, like, we have local grocery store workers who are striking.
Right. Stand up for yourself.
Yeah, because they want, like, better healthcare coverage or whatever. And so, they're standing on the corner, outside the theater, and we're like honking at them and waving as we drive by. Like,
this is real life.
So Captain Marvel is a girl. And it's very girl power heavy, which is appropriate because the 90s are when the Spice Girls were here. The Spice Girls were all about superficial girl power, but that was their thing. Girl power, girl power, girl power. And then Captain Marvel is girl power, but it's not just girls, it's everybody. Like, find your strength, stand up.
Exactly.
Like,
and I'm hoping that moments like these, popular culture moments like these, will help us to get to the point where we are talking about people having power, not just girls, not just minorities, not just like, let's all just be equal against the system and all stand up against bad things that we think are wrong. Like, just, and not,
because toxic masculinity hurts boys too.
Yes, exactly. Like, and seeing the wrong role models in their lives, and seeing, over the course of generations, fraternity houses and that sort of thing. Like, this behavior has got to stop. And I think that we're seeing, I'm hoping, because I have 2 young daughters, I'm hoping we're seeing the tipping point on all this sort of stuff with cultural moments like this. Like, this is great. Like, maybe I'm different from other people, but I didn't go in thinking, oh, this is going to be like a chick superhero movie. Like, oh yeah, this Captain Marvel's a woman. Like, I was just thinking, well, let's just see what this is going to be like. And it turned out to be, I thought it was great. Maybe I thought the same thing when I came out of Black Panther and there are other movies that I came out of thinking, oh, this was really great. You get caught up in the action, you get caught up in the adrenaline of the movie, and then looking back on it, it's like, well, yeah, it just wasn't. Black Panther was just kind of another superhero movie to me. Same with Avengers, the last one we saw. This one I think is different. This one is a different kind of animal because there was more story to it. It wasn't just 180 minutes of destruction and blood. It was and CGI. There was actually a lot of story here, and there was a lot. You got to know the characters, and you got to know the characters around the characters, like the best friend of Brie Larson, Captain Marvel. They got to know each other better, and there was a kid in it that was really good. So there's just really. There's a lot of depth to this movie. I recommend it.
That's what I was thinking, actually, was that Marvel does really well is that it's a superhero movie, but they try to make it more than a superhero movie.
They try.
They cast people like who do a really, really good job.
They cast actors.
Yeah, they cast actual actors. Yeah. Like, it's not just like, oh, let's put Ben Affleck in a Batman suit. Like, okay, sure. Okay, boy,
Yeah.
Like, they cast really good actors. Like,
you realize, of course, that the Boston loyal legal firm that's been searching my name on LinkedIn is now going to check in again.
We've insulted the Wahlbergs. Now we're insulting, like, the Afflecks, too, right? Like,
let's never go to Boston with my license plate that says Daltz on it.
Right, totally. So they cast really good actors, but then they also, it's not just like a token like moment of human interaction between like explosions, like there's action, but then there's also, and I don't know if this is because it was more of like a quote unquote chick movie, so maybe they anticipated there would need to be more emotions, but I don't know. I mean, in Black Panther you had like Killmonger, like that whole thing, and there was like more emotion in there too, like even so I don't know. So now we're getting back into, but this is the one I was really wondering about, the second phase of like the Marvel, like once Avengers Endgame happens and like a lot of the superheroes from the first phase,
they sort of tapped out the vein
of
like wealth here,
right? Like I think Robert Downey Jr. is done as Iron Man, and like Chris Hemsworth is done as Thor, and Chris Evans is done as Captain America. Where do they go from here? Like, where do they go from here? And I was like, I don't know, like the second phase, I don't know if I'm into it, but like I would be into seeing more Captain Marvel movies.
Yeah, and as we saw at the end of the movie, and those, as you've educated me, there's always a couple of hits after the credits, during the credits, after the credits, and we saw that Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, is going to be back and going to help in the new Avengers movie. So it's all tying back together again. I will say that it is a little bit formulaic because it's a superhero movie, so there's got to be a certain formula you have to follow. And I was getting a little bit... So the 90s thing to me felt fabricated because I thought, well, okay, because it's Guardians of the Galaxy, and they did, what did they do, 70s music there, or was it 80s music?
I think it was 70s and 80s.
70s and 80s music because of the mixtape that Star-Lord got from his mom or whatever it was, some sort of fabrication there. And it feels fabricated because she just happens to crash land in the 90s, so we get hit over the head with it. She lands in a blockbuster. So it's like, oh yeah, okay, there's only one blockbuster left in the world, so this has got to be the 90s or thereabouts. And then we hear the music that the security guard is listening to in his car, and it's not anything that any security guard, I think, in his position ever would have listened to. Is like R&B or something. Yeah,
it was like What a Man by Salt and Pepper
right,
or
it
something,
was just
right?
Completely, maybe that was an in-joke. Maybe that was part of the whole thing. Yeah. But that felt a little bit fabricated to me. It felt like...
And then Stan Lee was reading the Mallrats script
like the
and
subway. He was rehearsing his part. Yeah.
And like, let me just say, no subway
All
in LA is like not remotely that crowded. Like, you know, public transport in LA. I was like, this is the most crowded train in LA history right here.
But when they did the 90s music and the 90s nostalgia, it was like that was a fabrication to me. It didn't need to happen. It didn't, you know, that was not a part of the motivation. And so from there on, they're playing 90s music in the movie, no matter where they are in time. And there's one very pivotal scene where Annette Bening is there, and Brie Larson comes and meets her in her psyche or whatever sort of mental zone thing they're talking about with the wavy walls and everything like that. And it's the music that introduces that scene is "Come As You Are" by Nirvana, and
my favorite Nirvana song.
And it's a fantastic song. And I'm thinking, if Kurt Cobain were alive today, he would be outraged at the fact that his song is in a Marvel movie.
Well, can we say that, though? Because we are going to be doing another podcast episode on Oasis. And, I mean, if Kurt Cobain were still alive, who knows what would have happened?
Like, and that's one of those beautiful things we just don't know.
You don't know. Like, we know what happened with Oasis. We don't know what would have happened with Nirvana.
And Kurt Cobain's the same age as me, and maybe he would be working at an insurance company like I am.
Right, like, you know, he's at an ad agency writing jingles for like Duncan Hines.
Ice as you are. No.
Oh no! Remember we had that conversation a couple weeks ago about like the Swedish hit factory writing pop songs.
Yes.
And we're like, there's that fat Swedish guy in a Kangol in a cubicle writing I'm a genie in a bottle.
In Stockholm.
Right. Come and rub me the right way. You got to rub me the right way. Like that would be Kurt Cobain.
He's farmed out.
He'd be in a cubicle in
totally
Seattle.
Sold
like,
out. No.
You know, with a pot belly and like still wearing the flannel writing, you know,
so
Cardi B songs.
Let's save this. The other part of the day was we were going to go to Shazam. I was dragging you to see Shazam.
Can I make one more point?
Oh, we're not done with the movie yet? Okay.
Samuel L's Wiglet, distracting.
So they did some CGI on
him and the guy who played Coulson.
Right, and it was a little distracting, but maybe that's because I knew they didn't look that good, smooth. I just love Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
he's the best.
He was great in that.
They almost let him drop a mother effer. Like they almost let him drop it. Like when the Flurkin scratched his eye or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
and I didn't know that was the origin story of his patch.
I didn't know.
And maybe that's an in joke too. But
yeah. Okay, so Shazam.
So on to Shazam. We're double dipping at the theater that needs heavy duty renovations. And the teenage boys who work there don't care. They just kind of look the other way. Actually, they probably don't look at all because they're on their phones.
Yeah, they're up front eating like all the free popcorn.
Right,
like, they don't care.
And there are some renovations going on, so there's some partitions there that enable us to see as many movies as we want to.
And get confused.
So I said to Coco, as we're watching the credits of the movie we're in, Captain Marvel.
And we missed the second post-credit scene
in order to dive for the double dip.
Which didn't end up working out for us.
So we went to the double dip, and we go into the theater that I thought Shazam was in. And Shazam was there, actually, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Except it was the last 20 minutes of the movie.
And
we thought that it was the beginning of the movie. We thought we had just missed the credits.
Yeah, because we had stayed for the first post-credits Captain Marvel scene.
Because those are important.
Because I made him stay for that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay.
She pushed me down, actually.
Yeah, I punched him in the face with my fire hands like Captain Marvel.
Because you felt enabled.
Yeah, I did. I was like, girl power!
Fight the man!
Yeah. And, so we stayed for the first post-credit scene, and then I was like, okay, let's just go, because we've already missed the first 10 minutes of Shazam. Let's just go to it.
And this is one of the hazards of when you double dip and you don't time it properly, is that sometimes you think, okay, we've just missed the beginning of the movie.
Right.
We're okay, because we just missed the credits, we just missed the previews, or whatever it happens to be. It's like, okay, we can pick this up. We've seen enough movies. We're smart enough. So we're sitting there watching this, and I'm thinking like,
narrator's voice. They were not smart enough. Morgan Freeman is in your head. They were not smart enough.
As it turns out, they were not smart enough. So we step into the theater. People are already in there. No big deal. We sit down. And there's this battle going on. And it's a highly confrontational, incredible moment in Shazam where there's a lot of battles going on. So where I'm thinking is, usually in these movies, because I'm thinking it's a formula, superhero formula. There's a battle at the beginning,
right? And
then there's the
exposition.
The villain escapes, and then they chase the villain for the rest of the movie, and then and then there's the denouement at the end where
take a drink,
where the superheroes ultimately triumph over the bad guys. So I'm thinking we're just seeing the preliminary battle. Right. Well, it turns out we were seeing the climax of the movie. We just walked into so these people in the theater are like, what's going on?
I know.
These two people are a little late coming to this movie. It's been on for an hour and a half.
Right. We saw the last 10 minutes of
Shazam. So we went to the wrong theater, people. We double dipped. So this is the universe saying, don't double dip, it's bad for you. Because we went into the theater, saw the last 10 minutes of the movie, and then we're sitting there and thinking, oh yeah, that's interesting. And then the credits rolled up.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we missed it.
You know what though? I'm really not sad that we missed it.
I know you didn't want to go to see Shazam, and I dragged you kicking and screaming.
No, I would have watched it because you've gone to see all the Marvel movies that I've taken you to.
This is what love does.
This is what love does. And I was like, okay, I'll totally go see Shazam. And then the 10 minutes that we saw, I was really not impressed.
It was forced.
It was very forced. It was like, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this clip on YouTube that was like, if Friends didn't have a laugh track, would you know that this scene is supposed to be funny? And they take out the laugh track, and you're like, yeah, no, that's not funny. And it was kind of like that. It was like, ooh, yeah, no, that's not. I know that's supposed to be funny, but yeah, that's not funny.
But what happened is we came out of this movie that was completely serious. I mean, there were some wisecracks and stuff like that, but it was generally a very serious movie, and it had a lot of message. As it turns out, it was a heavy movie in a lot of ways. Captain Marvel, a superhero movie, who knew? And we come out of that, and then we dodge into this other movie that's supposed to be slapsticky, and we didn't get it from the beginning, right?
Which, like I said, I thought it was maybe an update of the Shaq movie, and I was like, wait, is that Seth from the OC? Wait, is that Zachary Levi? Who? What?
I didn't recognize any of the actors.
I had no idea who any of these people were.
So I was thinking that it was.
I still don't know what happened at the end. Were they alter egos? Were they shapeshifters like the Skrulls? I really don't know what happened.
He talked about the whole 7 deadly sins. And I was thinking, well, what is this Usual Suspects? What movie did we walk into here?
Right, exactly. The 7, with What's in the Box?
Right. What's in the box? What's in the box? Yeah,
Speaking of the 90s.
I think I would have liked to have
seen it from the beginning.
Started at the beginning.
Because we can't follow Shazam unless we see it from the beginning.
I just think we were at a disadvantage because we come out of this movie, the universe has been saved, and then all of a sudden we're talking to this guy and he looks like, I don't know, he's got Brill cream in his hair, and he's all slicked back, and he's got these fake muscles. He's like, oh yes, very good. I got you there.
The guy from Chuck, right?
Oh, he looked like Putty.
He
looked a little bit like Putty.
I love Putty.
Yeah, so he looked like Putty, and in the red and everything with the New Jersey Devils
thing. And that was the thing too. I'm like, why are they dressed like the Flash? This is not the Flash. Why are they dressed like the Flash? I don't understand.
So DC Comics, they really try. They really try, but
they're
it's just
the
not,
short bus of superheroes.
Right. They're like or even just there's a bus stop and everybody gets on the bus and then the bus pulls away and there's a kid that's always late running to the bus. That's DC Comics. You're like chasing the bus. Hey, wait a minute, I'm still okay.
I did. Mark Strong apparently had a role in this movie, which I don't know what it was because we don't know what the movie was actually about.
We saw the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Right. But
he was the villain guy, wasn't he?
He was the villain, and then at the end,
who had like an alien morph thing in his brain. Or
yeah,
something like that.
and at the end, he was like in a jail cell writing in like hieroglyphics or something.
Right.
But like, I was like, wow, Mark Strong really needed a paycheck to agree to be in this,
well,
based on the 10 minutes that we saw.
And that was a total swipe from all the Marvel movies, where we watched a bit of the credits because we were stunned. We were like, wait a minute,
wait, this is over?
We got in the wrong theater. What happened? It was just a 14-minute movie. Like, what's happening? And then the credits roll, and then this comes on. And it's like, well, that's a total swipe from Marvel because nobody else does that.
Right,
I mean, it's like usually the credits are on, and the only thing that happens is like I always harken back to those Burt Reynolds movies where like the bloopers would come on.
Yeah,
and you'd like watch Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise killing themselves laughing.
Yeah.
So we saw
part of Shazam.
Enough to judge it.
That we can't follow.
Enough to, because we're rocket scientists, so we couldn't figure out Shazam in the last 14 minutes.
As I said to Daltz as we were walking out, like, how many college graduates does it take to figure out which theater to go into?
So the moral of the story is, double dipping is wrong, but always check the listings twice to make sure you go in the right theater.
And then by the time we figured out which theater we were supposed to go into, then we were like, well, this has now already been playing for a half hour. So now we're still not going to be able to follow it. So let's just go.
So I think what would happen,
non-replacement worker grocery store.
If we had gone
some milk.
If we had gone into the theater, we would have been about 20 minutes ahead of where we went into the last movie.
Yeah, totally.
And jumped into that spot.
Like, oh, that's Mark Strong.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And that's why he's in blue and he's in red.
And did the little black girl always say racist stuff? Because like at the end, she's like, well, it's not racist if I say it. And I'm like, wait, what did she say? And I'm like, is this a thing throughout the movie? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And so to cap our day, we come out of the theater.
How many college graduates does it take?
So we had a good first movie. Second movie sort of left us wanting a little bit. And then we go into the parking lot.
To get in the car to go to the non-scab grocery store
because
to buy
we're
milk.
Supporters of honest work and honest pay.
Non-dairy milk because I'm vegan now.
And we go to get in the car, and I'm flicking the door lock thing. The door's going to unlock. I go and unlock the thing, and the door's not unlocking. I was, what is going on? Of course, it's a car that's exactly the same as ours.
Parked two
spots closer to the theater than we were. So that was a capper to our day. It's like, what's my superpower? Well, it's clearly not recognizing the obvious. Not recognizing that it's not my car, and not recognizing this is not the right theater to go in.
So we had the putty reference. Now we're going to have another Seinfeld reference, like that episode where they couldn't find their car in the mall parking garage, and then they get into the car at the end, and like Seinfeld is like trying to turn the engine over and it won't, and apparently that was not actually part of the plot. Like they were just supposed to get in the car and drive off, but then he got in the car and it wouldn't turn on, and like they were like, well, this is perfect, now we have to leave it like this. So 2 Seinfeld references in one
that shows you how
movie episode.
It shows you how relevant we are. When was the last time Seinfeld was on the air?
No, it's still on TBS. I used to watch it.
No, but that's reruns.
No, like 20 years ago. 20 years ago. Speaking of the 90s, we're all about the 90s today.
Oh, yeah. That's a 90s theme.
Today.
So I'll buy that. I'll buy the 90s theme.
There we go. The 90s theme. And I would also like to say, because we talked about this, so Stan Lee was reading the Mallrats script in the
Rest in peace, Stan.
Inexplicably crowded LA subway train.
Right.
He was also in a movie that we recently watched called Yoga Hosers.
Oh, I forgot we were going to talk about
How
this.
did you forget we were going to talk about Yoga Hosers?
This is the pièce de résistance.
Take a drink. So
we had a guest appearance by Napoleon there. I don't know what happened.
Don't watch Yoga Hosers. Don't watch Yoga Hosers. It's really not good.
There's the only other movie that would have enticed us more would have been Yoga Cookies.
Yoga Cookies, yes.
If it had been called Yoga Cookies, then we would have been all the way in.
But because I'm down dog.
Because I'm a hoser and you're a yoga teacher, we figured, how could we go wrong with Yoga Hosers?
Right.
There are many ways you can go wrong.
Yeah, it's not a good movie. Apparently, I'm guessing it was like Johnny Depp bankrolled it because his daughter is in it.
Kevin Smith written and directed.
Yeah, and Kevin Smith's daughter also co-stars with Johnny Depp's daughter. And Stan Lee inexplicably makes a cameo as a Canadian 911 operator.
Not only Canadian, but like Winnipeg or something like that.
What's your emergency, eh?
It's like there weren't any stereotypes in this movie at all.
No, definitely not. So
don't waste your time on Yoga Hosers. It's on Netflix right now. Just bypass that sucker.
Yeah, like Dalt said, we thought this is going to be we know it's going to be silly, but cool. And then we watched it and we were like, I don't think I've ever seen a worse movie than this. So
I think what we're always trying, because we want the other person to be happy. So we're always trying to find that medium, that what am I trying to say? That happy middle ground, where both of us enjoy a movie, because it's not a superheroes movie, it's not a deep thinking, ponderous.
I like deep thinking movies too.
Well, yeah, that's true. So I don't want to try to dig myself into a hole here. Yeah. But we have different tastes.
Do you want to be happy, or do you want to be right?
We have different tastes in movies. Let's put it that way. And I figured, well, Yoga Hosers, it's
right. It's got something for everybody.
It's got something for everybody, and it might be Canadian, and it's there's this and there's that.
And then it was just bad.
And then so actually it did unite us because we both hated it.
I think I actually did say on Facebook, I'm trying to think if I've seen a worse movie than this, and I really can't. So.
Yeah, and I mean, what were we thinking? We knew that it probably was going to be terrible, right?
Well, but I mean, it's got a name like Yoga Hoser, so why not? Give Yoga Hosers a chance. But don't, actually. But it's actually bad.
Don't. Yeah, we gave it a chance, and it pained us greatly.
So is there anything else that you want to say about Captain Marvel, or Shazam, or Yoga Hosers, or replacement grocery store workers, or cars that are not ours?
I think this has been the best podcast we've had so far.
This is pretty freewheeling. Yeah.
This has been the best podcast of April 2019.
Well, yeah.
I think so.
Because it's the only podcast of April 2019.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I'm sure there were a lot of things in my head that I thought about, but now that I'm sitting here, I can't really think of anything.
I thought, so the bottom line, Captain Marvel, go see it.
Yeah.
Shazam, if you're going to go see it from the beginning.
So you can follow it.
Yoga Hosers.
Don't see it.
Don't see it. Striking grocery workers, honk your horn and wave at them when you drive by.
Yeah. Stick it to the man.
The man is a bad thing.
Yes.
Oh, well, that was the theme from the first movies. That was the theme from Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And Captain Marvel, by the way, from my understanding, was a shot across the bow because Shazam was actually called Sergeant Marvel or something like that. So in the original days, Shazam was Marvel, and there was a lawsuit going on between the two of them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so Captain Marvel was a retaliatory, back in the day, move against Shazam. So that was another reason that I wanted to see those two movies back to back.
Oh, you know what? Okay, I did think of something else. So speaking of...
you weren't listening at all when I was
like seeing those two movies back to back because of the retaliatory measures.
You were looking over my shoulder.
Stop. So, and now you're making me forget what I was going to say.
Oh.
So I did think it was interesting, like at the very end, Nick Fury who apparently is only just called Fury, is sitting there writing...
Not Nicholas.
Right, he's, he realizes there are threats from outside of our world that we have to defend against. And
are you going to spoil this?
No.
Okay.
And I think it was called like the Protector Initiative.
You are going to spoil this.
Yeah. Well, shut up. So, but then he sees a picture.
Spoiler alert.
But then he sees a picture of Captain Marvel as Carol Danvers back before...
Or Danvers, as they would like us to pronounce it.
Before she got kidnapped by Jude Law. And she was like a Air Force pilot, and I didn't know if this is actually a thing in real life, but her name was written on the side of her plane, and it said like Captain Carol Avenger Danvers, and I was like, that's very cool that the entire Avengers series is named after a chick. So girl power, honey, girl power.
And on that note, because I haven't got anything to say to top that, nor could I.
No, you totally could.
For another week, this podcast, we're glad to be back. There's going to be more. We're going to churn them out like you wouldn't believe, because we love our listeners.
But that doesn't mean that the quality is going to suffer.
No.
We are not like a Chinese factory paying people subhuman wages. We're all about the quality.
No, we volunteer.
That's true.
We don't get paid at all.
We don't get any wages.
Oh, and the engineer is giving me the finger, so that means it's time to wrap it up. So for another week of fantastic content on Coco and Daltz, the podcast, thank you for listening.
And social commentary.
I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Daltz.